My name is Ginger Morgan. I'm 36 years old. And this is the story of how my husband betrayed me with my own sister, so I vanished and took everything they ever cared about. To the world, I was a woman with a quiet life. A lecturer in applied linguistics at a university tucked away in Oregon, passionate about intercultural communication, academic theory, and the unspoken nuances in language that define relationships. But at home, I was a ghost in my own marriage. My family, especially my in-laws, only saw me as the woman who can't have children. No matter how many awards I won, how many research papers I published, that was the label that stuck. My husband, Ethan, and I had been married for 8 years. He worked as a senior accountant at a construction firm in Portland. From the outside, we looked steady: 2 careers, 2 cars, weekend camping trips, the classic 2-story Pinwood house with a wraparound porch. But inside that house, something was crumbling. Quietly. Slowly. And I was too exhausted to notice. After Christmas that year, Ethan started coming home late. At first, he blamed year-end audits, then tax prep, then emergency projects. I believed him. Not because I was naive, but because I was drowning in my own pressures. I had just been nominated for an international research initiative in Denmark. I was spending late nights editing papers, comparing linguistic case studies, trying to keep my academic life from slipping through my fingers. That's when Brooke reappeared. My half-sister, Brooke, was never close to me. She never remembered birthdays. Never called just to talk. Suddenly, she was inviting me for coffee. Asking about Ethan. Asking about our efforts to have children. Her concern felt out of place, like someone knocking on your door in the middle of the night just to check in. Kind, on the surface. But something underneath wasn't right. You and Ethan still trying? She asked once, stirring her latte with deliberate slowness. I know it's hard. I just want you to be happy. She said it with a squinting smile, the kind that hides more than it reveals. I told myself I was overthinking it. But then there were the glances. The smiles Ethan and Brooke shared at family events, those nearly imperceptible moments when both looked at their phones and smirked at the same time. When I asked Ethan about a new shirt I'd never seen before, he said his boss gave it to him. When I asked Brooke how work was going, she said, busy. All those late nights. That's when it started clicking. On the morning of the snowstorm, my university canceled all classes. I was supposed to finish a report from my office, but something in my gut pulled me home. Maybe it was intuition. Maybe it was the silence I needed to face. I didn't think, I just drove. The streets were blanketed in white, untouched, like a clean slate waiting for the first step. But when I turned onto Maple Crescent, that blank slate shattered. Brooke's deep red Ford Escape was parked in front of my house. At first, I laughed nervously. Maybe she was dropping something off. Maybe she needed Ethan's help. But my heart told a different story. It told me to stop the car, to walk in with my boots still wet and my hands trembling. Inside the house was silence, no TV, no radio. Just the faint drip of melted snow off my coat sleeve. I called out. No answer. Then I heard it. A giggle. Familiar. Intimate. Wrong. I climbed the stairs without thinking. Each step felt like walking through wet cement, slow and heavy. I opened the bedroom door, the same room where I had sobbed after each failed IVF cycle, where I had once imagined putting a crib near the window. Ethan. Brooke. Entwined in the very sheets I bought weeks ago. Their expressions? Pure shock. Mine? Cold. Detached. Well, I said, my voice steadier than I expected, isn't this cozy? They scrambled. Covered themselves. Tried to speak. How long? I asked Ethan, ignoring the nauseating swirl in my gut. He couldn't look me in the eyes. Almost 2 years, he said. 2 years. I laughed. But it wasn't joy, it was something hollow, scraped out from the inside. So while I was injecting hormones, tracking temperatures, and praying month after month for a child, you two were playing house? Brooke tried to stammer an apology. Ethan tried to touch my shoulder. I stepped back. Don't touch me. I walked out without grabbing a coat. Drove to a hotel with nothing but the clothes I had on and my keys. And for the first time in months, I didn't cry. I planned. Because by morning, I wasn't a wife. I was a woman preparing to vanish and take everything they valued with me. That first night in the hotel, I allowed myself to break. I curled under a scratchy blanket in a room that smelled faintly of bleach and regret. The bedside lamp flickered with every gust of wind, but it was steadier than my thoughts. I didn't sleep much, I didn't need sleep. I needed clarity. And somewhere between 2 a.m. and dawn, clarity came. The first thing I did was block both Ethan and Brooke's numbers. I didn't delete them. No, I wanted to remember exactly how they had tried to reach me, frantic messages, voicemails filled with panic, excuses. It didn't mean anything, Ethan had said in one of the voicemails I let play silently. It was just emotional confusion. Brooke's messages were even worse. You can't just disappear on us. This isn't fair. Fair? That word almost made me laugh out loud in that dim little room. On the second day, I made a list. It wasn't a revenge list. Not yet. It was a survival list. Finances, documents, legal contacts, insurance policies. I copied everything from our joint accounts. I logged into every platform we shared and took screenshots of all the activity from the last 6 months. Ethan never changed his passwords. A blessing from a man who had gotten too comfortable betraying someone he assumed would never leave. By the third night, I had called Melissa. Melissa and I had been friends since graduate school. She was tough as nails and currently one of the sharpest divorce lawyers in Oregon. When I called her, I didn't cry. I didn't even say hello. I want a plan, I said. She didn't ask for an explanation. She just replied, meet me at Alex and June's cafe tomorrow at noon. Bring everything you've got. That's why she was my best friend. The next day, I arrived early. Melissa slid into the booth across from me like a storm front in a pantsuit. You're calm, she noted, watching me. I can't afford not to be, I replied. I don't want revenge. I want control. She smiled grimly. Then let's give you control. We spent hours dissecting every account, every asset Ethan and I shared, the house, his company shares, the Roth IRA, the car leases. Oregon was an equitable distribution state, not equal. Melissa explained that if I could prove infidelity and emotional damages connected to the betrayal, I'd have the legal advantage. I don't want him to be ruined, I said. I want to make it easy for him to give me everything. That's even better, Melissa replied. You won't just win. You'll make him hand you the victory. By the 5th day, I received an email that would become my exit door. An offer letter from the University of Edinburgh, a visiting professorship I had applied to on a whim nearly 6 months earlier. Full relocation support. 3 years. Visa included. Housing on campus. I reread the email 4 times, each time with a heavier chest and lighter shoulders. Once upon a time, I had wanted to stay close to home. But home no longer existed. What Ethan and Brooke destroyed wasn't just trust. It was my concept of belonging. I called the university the next day and accepted the position. I'll need about 4 weeks to handle the transition, I told the program director. Of course, he said, his accent soft and measured. We'll prepare everything for your arrival. Everything was falling into place. Back in Salem, the snow had started melting. I returned home that following Saturday afternoon, parked in the driveway as if I were just coming back from the store. Ethan was already at the front door, eyes swollen, cheeks hollow, waiting for me like a lost child. I said nothing. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I made a mistake. I know I destroyed something real. Please, we can fix this." I looked him dead in the eyes. "I'm not here to talk about the past. I'm here to organize what's next." He blinked. "What do you mean?" "I accepted a job offer in Edinburgh. 3 years. I leave next month." It took him a full minute to process it. "You're leaving? Just like that?" "No," I said. "Not just like that. I'm doing what I should have done the day I opened that door." I moved back in, not to reconcile, but to finalize the illusion. I needed Ethan to believe I was reconsidering everything, leaning toward forgiveness. So I cooked. I laughed sometimes. I even sat on the couch with him and watched TV shows we used to enjoy. He fell for it. By the second week, I suggested we go to counseling. Ethan grabbed the idea like a man clinging to a cliff edge. "Maybe," I said carefully, "this is the reset we needed." He believed it. And that was his biggest mistake. During the day, I met with Melissa and a financial advisor named Angela Scott. Angela was everything I needed: efficient, discreet, brilliant. She walked me through every financial maneuver I'd have to make in order to protect myself, and separate every dollar I could from Ethan before I left. That's when the plan became something more. I wasn't just walking away. I was going to take everything they ever thought they stole from me, the home, the future, the security, and leave them with nothing but each other. If betrayal was their bond, then it would be the only thing they had left. Ethan didn't realize it, but every time he kissed my cheek goodnight, he was inching closer to his own unraveling. We moved like a couple in recovery, at least that's what he thought. I asked questions like, "What would a new start look like for us, and have you ever wanted to live abroad?" He opened up, eager, like a puppy who'd finally been let back in the house after chewing up the couch. One night, I sat beside him with a glass of wine, our living room bathed in soft lamplight. "If we're really going to start over," I said gently, "we can't take all this with us." I gestured to the furniture, the art on the walls, even the bookshelves I once built with my own hands. "You mean, sell everything?" Ethan asked. I nodded, smiling faintly. "We don't need reminders of what we're leaving behind." He swallowed hard and nodded, eager to be agreeable. "Okay, yeah. Fresh start." That phrase. He repeated it like a sacred mantra. And every time he did, I took one more step toward disappearing with everything he thought we were rebuilding. I met with Angela and Melissa again 2 days later. The financial transfer plan was airtight. We opened a new international relocation account in my name, under the guise of ease of access while I transitioned into my Edinburgh role. Ethan thought it was joint. It wasn't. Melissa helped me prepare all the legal authorizations, financial power of attorney, property release forms, cross-border asset protections. The beauty was in the details. We disguised everything as temporary paperwork, just until we were both settled abroad. We even involved a notary who posed as part of the university's legal team. Ethan never read the fine print. He just signed, looking at me with renewed devotion. "I trust you, Ginger," he said one evening, after signing the last document. "I've always trusted you." I smiled. That's the only thing that's kept us going, right? Inside, I was sickened. Not because I was deceiving him, but because I had once loved him enough to ignore the signs. I wasn't just mourning my marriage. I was mourning the woman I had been. And that woman was never coming back. One afternoon, I sat on the back porch with a manila envelope in my lap. Inside were the results of a little side investigation I had commissioned. Brooke. I needed to know what else she was hiding, because I knew, in my bones, that the betrayal didn't stop with Ethan. The private investigator's name was Nathan Cook. Ex-cop. Discreet. Brilliant. He handed me the folder like it was nothing, like he didn't know that what he uncovered would burn the last shred of sympathy I had left for my sister. There she was, Brooke, caught in a series of photos walking into a roadside motel with a man I didn't recognize. Dean Campbell, her boss. Married. 3 kids. Well known in the community. Nathan's note was concise. Regular visits. Always the same room. They stay overnight. He leaves first. The photographs were sharp, time-stamped. No wiggle room. No excuses. I sat there staring at her face in the photos, wondering how I had ever convinced myself she was family. Brooke wasn't interested in love. She was addicted to control, to conquest. She didn't want Ethan because she loved him. She wanted Ethan because I had him. Just like she wanted Dean. Just like she'd always wanted my life, piece by piece. I locked the file away. By then, the house was sold. The offer had come in fast, real estate was booming in Salem. We accepted a price far above asking. Ethan beamed with pride, talking about how it would make starting over in Edinburgh so much easier. We moved into a short-term rental. I packed light. Ethan brought everything, still delusional enough to believe he was building a new life with me. Every time he unpacked a box, he made some hopeful comment like, maybe we can find a flat with a view of the sea, or we should adopt a dog once we're settled. I nodded. I even made lists with him. But behind every plan, every smile, was the knowledge that I was orchestrating the greatest vanishing act he would ever witness. And still, he never suspected a thing. One night, as he sat beside me on the couch reading about Scottish neighborhoods, I leaned over and said, we should consolidate our finances, just for the move. It'll be easier to manage everything from one account until we're settled. He didn't even pause. Yeah, that makes sense. I opened the account under both our names, but only I had full authorization. By then, Ethan had cashed out his shares in the company, liquidated his long-term savings, even transferred the pension funds into what he believed was our relocation nest egg. The total balance? $780,000. He didn't know I had already moved it, bit by bit, into a private account based in Edinburgh. And when the last of it cleared, I left exactly $10,000 in the fake joint account. Just enough to make him wonder. Just enough for him to think he still had something. $1,000 for every year he lied to me. That same week, Bridget, our fake university legal rep, came to the apartment again. We played our roles like seasoned actors. She walked Ethan through more transition documents, legal authorizations for asset management overseas. He signed everything. His only question was, should I keep a copy? I smiled. I'll scan them. Edinburgh requires originals. He nodded, trusting me to carry him into our future. And that was the last thing he'd ever trust me with. The countdown had begun. 3 weeks until departure. That's all I needed. 3 weeks to finalize every detail, secure every asset, and ensure that when I left, I would vanish so cleanly, so thoroughly, there wouldn't be a single thread for Ethan, or Brooke, to pull me back. Every day, I rehearsed the same script, the devoted wife, cautiously optimistic, giving her marriage a second chance. Every night, I checked balances, encrypted files, scanned and uploaded documents to private cloud storage. My phone had 2 sets of apps, one he could see, and one buried in a locked folder. On the surface, I was planning our relocation. Underneath, I was planning my rebirth. Ethan didn't see it. He saw what he wanted to see, what cheaters always hope for after they're caught. That a little comfort, a little routine, could erase the rot beneath the floorboards. He'd sit at the dinner table and smile with a kind of sad hope. I know this isn't easy, he said one night, after I served him roasted chicken, the same kind I used to make during the early days of our marriage. But you being willing to try again, it means everything to me. I looked at him and said what I'd trained myself to say, we'll see, Ethan. But I'm not making promises. Inside, I felt nothing. The Ethan I loved never existed. The man I thought I married, the man who once held my hand during ultrasound appointments and whispered, "We'll get through this," was a role he played. And when the cameras stopped rolling, when I was bleeding and broken in that bathroom in the middle of the night, he was texting my sister. I didn't need revenge. I needed erasure. Brooke, meanwhile, had gone strangely silent. No more pleading texts. No more late-night voicemails. Maybe she had realized I wasn't coming back to the sisterhood charade. Or maybe she was too busy scrambling after Dean, her married boss, now that I was no longer an obstacle. Either way, her silence was golden. Until the night she showed up. It was just after 8 p.m. I was alone. Ethan was out picking up takeout. There was a knock at the door. I froze, teacup in hand, and for a second, I thought it might be a neighbor. But it wasn't. Brooke stood there, no makeup, hoodie pulled low over her brow, hands trembling just slightly. "Can we talk?" she asked. I didn't answer. I just stared. I needed to see you," she continued. "To say that I'm sorry. Really. I was messed up, and I let it happen, and..." "You let it happen?" I asked, my voice quiet. She blinked. "I didn't mean it like that." I opened the door wider. "Come in, Brooke. You've come this far. Might as well finish it." She stepped inside, looking around like a stranger in a museum. This wasn't her space anymore. It never was. "I know you probably hate me," she said, sitting on the edge of the armchair like it might reject her. "I don't," I said. "I don't feel anything toward you anymore." "That's worse than hate, Brooke." Her face paled. "I was lonely. I was jealous. I thought you had everything, you always seemed so perfect." "Perfect?" I laughed. I was shooting hormones into my thighs and crying in the car before work. My body rejected 3 pregnancies. I spent nights wondering if I was broken. And while I was grieving, you were sleeping with the one person who promised to protect me. Brooke's eyes filled with tears. I didn't know how to stop. I didn't even love him. That made me pause. I just wanted to feel like I mattered more than you. Even just once. And there it was. The real confession. Brooke didn't want Ethan. She wanted to win. But this wasn't a competition anymore. I stood, walked over to the desk, and pulled out the envelope Nathan Cook had given me. I placed it on the table between us. "You should go before Dean's wife gets this in the mail. I haven't sent it yet. But if you ever show up again, I will." Brooke looked like she'd been slapped. "You followed me?" "No. I protected myself. You taught me how." She didn't say another word. She stood, walked to the door, and left. I watched her through the window as she stood in the driveway, trembling. Then she got in her car and drove off. I never saw her again. 2 weeks before the move, Ethan started getting excited. He talked about buying a pair of leather boots for the Edinburgh weather. He looked up castle tours. He read Scottish slang books and practiced in a terrible accent over dinner. I nodded along, playing the part. I even booked a joint appointment at a moving company office, where we finalized shipping details for our furniture and personal effects. I told him I'd fly out first to settle housing with the university, then he'd follow in 2 weeks. He thought it was a smart plan. "You always think of everything," he said, kissing my forehead. Yes. Yes, I do. A few days before my flight, I transferred the final sum, over $780,000, into a private offshore account in my name. The joint account was now nearly empty. I left the token $10,000. A cruel courtesy. Then I logged out, shut the laptop, and packed my final suitcase. The night before I left, Ethan ordered from my favorite Thai restaurant. We ate quietly, candles flickering. He took my hand and said, Thank you for giving me another chance. I looked at him. Really looked. And then I said the last lie I'd ever tell him, "You're welcome." The morning of my flight arrived like any other day, gray, quiet, unremarkable. I woke before dawn, moved through the short-term rental like a shadow, and took one last look at the life I was about to bury. Ethan was still asleep, wrapped in the same navy blue sheets we bought during happier years. Or what I thought were happier years. I didn't wake him. I didn't need a scene. I needed silence. Clean departure. No flare-ups, no tears, no second chances. I showered, dressed, and wheeled my luggage to the front door. My brown wool coat felt like armor. Outside, the sky was still ink-dark, dew glistening on the car windshield. I left a single envelope on the kitchen table, no handwritten note, no confession. Just the scheduled printout of the email he'd be receiving at 8 a.m. Inside that email? All the notarized documents, bank transfers, legal filings, and the simplest goodbye he'd ever get. Ethan. I'm not running. I'm leaving a marriage you destroyed. You signed every paper. You handed me every key. You won't find me. Don't try. Ginger. I slid into the cab waiting outside. The driver, a retired vet named Marvin, loaded my suitcase into the trunk and asked, "Business or pleasure?" I paused. Neither. Just necessary. He nodded like he understood. And maybe he did. At the airport, I moved through security like a woman with nothing to declare. I didn't check my phone. I didn't need to. Everything was in motion. All the pieces I'd placed, quietly, surgically, over the past month were falling into their final positions. The plane took off a little after 9 a.m., cutting through the clouds with the same precision I had used to dismantle my old life. I didn't cry. I didn't sigh. I stared out the window as Oregon faded behind me and whispered just once, "Goodbye." 8 hours later, Edinburgh greeted me with soft rain and a sky the color of polished steel. The university's driver met me at the terminal, helped with my bags, and drove me through winding cobbled streets to the faculty apartment on campus. The building was old, stately, with ivy crawling up stone walls and glass lanterns swaying slightly in the breeze. Inside, the apartment was modest but beautiful. Oak floors, tall windows, a fireplace. More importantly, it was mine. Not ours. Not shared. Just mine. I set down my suitcase, walked to the desk, opened my laptop, and connected to Wi-Fi. My inbox lit up. The first email was from Melissa. Subject, "He knows." Ginger. Just spoke with his attorney. Ethan is, let's just say, not handling it well. But everything is legally sound. He signed it all. I've got your back. No contact from Brooke yet. I'll let you know if anything changes. You did it. You're free. M. The second was from Ethan himself. Or rather, from the shell of a man who used to be Ethan. Subject, please. Ginger. Please call me. I don't understand. You can't just leave. We were getting better. Tell me what this is. Tell me how to fix it. You left everything empty. You left me with nothing. Ethan. I closed the laptop. That was the idea. Over the next few days, the news spread like wildfire back in Salem. Ethan's parents emailed me, one kind, one confused. A few of our mutual friends reached out with vague checking-in messages. But the most unexpected was from Carla, a junior associate at Brooks' law firm. Subject, you should know. Hi Ginger. I know this is random, and you don't know me well. But I thought you'd want to know Brooke was just suspended. Her relationship with Dean became public. Dean's wife filed for divorce, citing adultery and ethical violations at the firm. Rumors say an anonymous file with photos and dates was sent to HR. Take care of yourself. You're stronger than you know. Carla. I stared at the screen for a long time. Not smiling. Not gloating. Just done. I opened a drawer in the desk and pulled out a note I had written weeks ago, before the move, before the final transfer, before the airport. It was only one line. Everything will fall, not by fire, but by truth. I folded it, tucked it away, and stepped outside. The Edinburgh air was cold, clean, laced with mist. Bells rang in the distance. Students rushed past with scarves and coffee cups. No one knew me. No one knew what I had escaped from. And that was perfect. Because I wasn't starting over. I was starting right. Edinburgh was quieter than I expected, deceptively so. The kind of quiet that didn't scream, didn't demand. It invited. It gave space. And after everything I had been through, that space was the first thing that didn't feel like a threat. My faculty apartment overlooked a small garden square, the kind you only see in movies, iron benches, ivy on the walls, students gathering under lanterns with takeaway coffee. My first few mornings, I sat by the window with a teacup, watching people move through the gray morning like parts of a calm machine. It was peaceful, but not empty. It was enough. The university welcomed me with open arms. The staff were kind but reserved, the way academics often are. I wasn't asked about my past, only about my research. My seminars filled quickly. I started teaching 3 courses, all centered around language, power, and perception. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had spent years studying how language creates or destroys trust, and yet hadn't seen the betrayal forming in my own home. But that was the old Ginger. The woman who begged her body for a child, who tolerated silence over suspicion, who thought forgiveness meant endurance. That Ginger was gone. I didn't miss her. Instead, I poured my energy into something new, rewriting my manuscript. It was a study I'd started years ago, titled Fractures in Intimate Communication, originally a dry, academic review of how relationships fracture through misunderstanding and linguistic shifts. But now, I had lived the data. The reworked draft was rawer, more personal. Still scholarly, but imbued with real pain and insight. Each paragraph felt like stitching part of myself back together. And the academic journal I submitted it to didn't just accept it, they fast-tracked it. "You write like someone who has seen the battlefield," the editor said over a Zoom call, but chose to come back with maps instead of weapons. I smiled at that. He wasn't wrong. A few months passed. Fall folded into winter. The city grew colder, cozier. I took long walks along the canal, lost myself in the Sunday markets, read books I hadn't touched in years. I didn't miss Ethan. I didn't miss Brooke. What I missed were pieces of myself I hadn't felt in years. And slowly, they were returning. Around that time, I started noticing a colleague, Adam Whitmore. He was a professor in the English department, taught American literature, had a deep voice and the kind of eyes that didn't look through you but right at you. We first spoke at a faculty luncheon. He had made some dry joke about the cafeteria coffee being stronger than Scottish whiskey, and I, exhausted and jet-lagged, actually laughed. A few days later, he passed me in the hallway and asked, "You ever feel like you're living a completely different life than the one you started?" I stopped in my tracks. Every single day. We started sharing coffee breaks. Then lunches. Then the occasional walk through the campus gardens. He never asked personal questions. He never pushed. He just showed up. Steady. Present. One foggy afternoon, we sat beneath a crooked tree outside the old law building. I told him everything. Not all at once, not like a dam breaking, but piece by piece, like unpacking an old suitcase I didn't know I still carried. He listened. Not like a man waiting for his turn to speak, but like a man who understood the difference between silence and absence. When I finished, he didn't say, "I'm sorry." He said, "The way you walked through that wasn't revenge. That was rebuilding. We didn't rush into anything. No late-night texts. No promises. Just a slow unfolding, the way good things often begin, quietly, without pressure. Meanwhile, back in Salem, the ghosts of my past were unraveling. I received the occasional update. Ethan had moved in with his mother. Lost his job at the construction firm after a quiet scandal involving asset mismanagement, which he blamed on stress. Brooke had been officially dismissed from her firm. Dean's wife filed for divorce, citing infidelity, and somehow Brooke's name ended up on several legal documents. She deleted her social media and disappeared from the internet altogether. But I didn't celebrate. I didn't even feel relief. I felt distance. They were no longer characters in my story. They were shadows from another book I'd already finished reading. Sometimes, during late evening classes, I'd watch my students discuss difficult topics, power, betrayal, truth, and I'd feel a strange sense of awe. They had no idea what their professor had survived. To them, I was just Dr. Morgan. Firm but fair. A woman who wore muted coats and always knew when to challenge them with the right question. And in those moments, I knew I had finally stepped into the life I was meant to live, not one I was clinging to, or fixing, or surviving. But one I had built, on my terms. A few weeks later, I submitted the final manuscript for publication. The title? Linguistics of Leaving, When Silence Speaks Louder Than Vows. The dedication page read: To the woman I used to be, thank you for holding on just long enough. Winter melted into spring, and with it, the last traces of the woman I once was. Edinburgh had become more than just a city to me, it was the space where I finally exhaled. The quiet cathedral bells in the morning, the scent of old stone in the rain, the pages of student essays, the buzz of cafes, it was all mine now. A life I didn't have to share, explain, or apologize for. My book was published in March. I held the first print copy in my hands on a gray Saturday morning. The cover was minimalist, clean, white, with one broken ring in the center, symbolizing a shattered vow. I stared at it for a long time, then opened the first page and reread the dedication. To the woman I used to be, thank you for holding on just long enough. I didn't cry. I had no tears left. What I felt was stronger than tears. It was peace. Completion. Like standing on the other side of a storm and realizing your foundation never cracked, even if the roof caved in. A few weeks later, I was invited to speak at a conference in London. Panel topic: Resilience through language, when words aren't enough. The irony made me laugh. After my session, a young woman approached me in the hallway. She looked nervous, clutching the book like it was a lifeline. I just wanted to say, this helped me leave, she said, her voice shaking. Not a marriage, but something toxic. Something that made me feel small. I smiled. Then it did exactly what it was meant to. She blinked at me. How did you write something so personal without breaking? I paused. Then answered, because I already broke. And what was left, what I rebuilt, that's what wrote it. That night, I returned to Edinburgh by train, staring out at the countryside rushing past. I thought of everything I had lost, a husband, a sister, the dream of motherhood, the illusion of a perfect life. And then I thought of what I had gained. Clarity. Autonomy. And, quietly growing in the background, something new with Adam. We still hadn't defined our relationship. We didn't need to. He never pushed, never asked for more than I was ready to give. Sometimes we shared long walks across the city. Other nights, we sat in silence, both reading our own books by the fire. One evening, we found ourselves walking home from a bookstore, our hands brushing once, twice, then finally staying entwined. I used to think closure meant getting answers, I said. Adam glanced sideways. And now? Now I think it's not about answers at all. It's about walking far enough from the pain that you stop needing any. He squeezed my hand gently. Said nothing. That spring, I planted daffodils in the windowsill box. It was something small, something mine. Every morning they reached higher toward the pale Scottish sun, blooming more than the day before. One day, I received a final email. No subject line. No signature. Just 2 lines. You took everything. And I guess you never looked back. It had to be Ethan. Or maybe even Brooke. It didn't matter. I closed the tab without replying and archived the message. There was nothing left to say to ghosts. The past had burned. And I didn't try to put out the flames, I built a home from the ashes. If you're listening to this, wondering if walking away means failure, let me say this clearly: walking away isn't weakness. It's the boldest thing you can do when someone's already broken every piece of you and expects you to stay. Sometimes justice isn't loud. It doesn't always involve courtrooms, public humiliations, or viral moments. Sometimes justice is waking up in a quiet room, under your own roof, with nothing hanging over you. Sometimes justice is simply living better, stronger, freer, without them. Because healing isn't about getting even. It's about getting back to yourself. And me? I got back everything. Everything that mattered. I didn't just survive betrayal. I ended it. Thank you for listening to Revenge Echoes, where stories speak louder than revenge. If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel, share your thoughts in the comments, and remember this: you don't have to burn bridges. Sometimes, you just need to stop watering the ones that lead nowhere.